Good to be here, everybody. This is July's FileMaker Pro Dallas User Group meeting. We're glad to have those of you that are here in attendance, and we appreciate those that are joining us virtually. Hope you get to learn a lot today. As far as conference announcements, there's still the Unconference in January out near San Francisco, so that's still open in September. So there's some conferences coming up if you want to extend your education. Also, on the announcements next month, we're going to be doing a studio and a single sign-on, and we've got a few other things scheduled in the months after that, so it should be a lot of fun. On another interesting note out there, for those of you that are developers that like to dig into the DDRs and figure out what's wrong or needs fixed in your solutions that have grown over the ages and have some old stuff in it, the Inspector Pro 9 is now free. You just have to go to Beeswax and download it. They're giving it away for free. So if you like to do some analyzing of your, what links are missed or calculations are invalid and all those kind of goodies, that's a great tool for doing that. It's a little complicated, but it's if you want to dig into that, it's great stuff.
My name is Matt Monroe. Steve and I started Harmonic together many years ago. And so in those many years, I wanted to take just a real quick moment to kind of, as a way of introduction, kind of explain our posture and our attitude here about the new release and about Claris FileMaker in general. There's a big air of optimism and enthusiasm about where we're headed. It has gone ebbed and flowed over the years, but I would say we have, over the years, attended almost every DevCon and Engage. And I would even say that for a long time, almost everybody went. There was a interesting dip several years ago as we felt like FileMaker had kind of entered into sort of a maintenance mode, like they were just skimming across the surface. And so our attendance didn't phase out. It just declined. Not all of us were going to DevCon. Not all of us were steaming ahead with every new feature of FileMaker. And I would even say 5, 6, 7 years ago, Steve and I really began a really hard push to bolster and to grow our stable of non-FileMaker developers, because we felt like there were more opportunities in that avenue than there were in our FileMaker opportunities. We were interested in all kinds of other things. Something changed, though, in 2024 Claris Engage. And what we got out of that Engage was a kind of a renewed sense that we weren't in maintenance mode anymore. That wasn't the posture we were getting from Claris. We got more from them a sense of determination and renewed thinking about how can we grow, how can we build, how can we expand. And so we came back from that very interested in where FileMaker was headed. Most recently, during the last 2025 Claris Engage, we returned very excited, and we knew that there was going to be some super big changes coming, and we decided as a company to lean very heavily in the direction of where it looked like Claris was heading, so that we could be ready to deliver on what we saw as some pretty significant and enduring new features. We came back and realized we are now entering a new level and a new era of FileMaker and Claris tools. And for those that don't know, Claris released their 2025 updates and new tool sets, and to both FileMaker Pro, FileMaker Server, Connect, Studio, the whole suite got updates, and we're very excited. We're very optimistic. It is not just about AI stuff, although that's pretty heavy. There are a lot of features that come combined with some of those updates that we're very excited about. There's stuff for everybody. There's stuff for the end user. There's stuff for the business owners. There's stuff for the developers. Here we are just a few days after what I consider to be one of the most important FileMaker releases in recent memory, maybe you could argue of all time. And I'm excited about what our guys are about to unpack. And so without too much further ado, I'd say we have 3 of our developers here, Alex, Brian, and Heather, who will be presenting on many of the new features. Not all of them. There's just not enough time. But we're going to start to unpack some of the things that we've uncovered. And we're excited to answer any questions you guys have afterwards about how this may impact you and what you might see. And without further ado, here's Alex to talk about
generate response from model.
There we go.
we're going to be talking today about FileMaker 2025. I'm talking specifically about a script step called Generate Response from Model. This is a very exciting new feature, but if this does not convince you to upgrade, that is okay. There are 2 more speakers after me, and we are known for our persistence. So I'm going to just very briefly just show you what this looks like, and we'll sort of look like, okay, how did we used to do things in the past? This is our new script step right here. As you can see, a lot of bells and whistles. And this is maybe the best possible way they could have done it, because the way it was in the past, this is in fact a file from Ronnie Rios at Claris. You would have to build up each of your individual elements, and it's pretty arcane. Okay. Now, a lot of these things are just now attached to a button or a switch or something within this script step. And I don't know, but between you and me, I really like the new way. Now, as I said, this is exciting. It's also incredibly complex. We are not going to go into every bit of this. That would take hours, double digits probably, to fully understand. So don't consider this something like Jacques Cousteau exploring all the wonders of the ocean floor. This is more like the Fonz sort of skimming along the surface of the water on water skis. Okay? So we have previously demoed this sort of thing before. Let's get my actual file back up right here. Because we've been talking about AI. This is unavoidable. But the LLM that I'm going to be working with, we have also, once I said, worked with before through Cohere. You're not limited to using Cohere. You can really use anything you want to, but it's a very easy way to get it set up, especially if, like me, you're just trying to learn about how this stuff works. And I love how Paul put it before. If he can do it, anyone can. I would say the same thing for myself. This isn't that big of a lift. It's actually pretty simple. So once again, I'm using Cohere's API, and I'm on the free tier. That absolutely matters. I'll show you where that comes into play later. Okay? So here's my little sample file, and I want you guys to put on your imagination caps. Let's suppose you're a zookeeper. And in fact, some of you actually still want to be zookeepers. I don't know who you are, but let's suppose you're a zookeeper. You have some sort of bird installation. And often at zoos, you're going to have some sort of kiosk. And they're interesting. And maybe you have like some sort of static content where you can sort of touch screen, hit a button, animal pops up, and you get more information. Well, once again, they're static. It's as soon as you have an animal change out, well, now you have to update the kiosk, and it's only going to serve the data points of which you decide to cover whenever you install it. So it's just a treadmill that you're going to have to keep running on forever. And this is historically how we've done things, not just in zoos, but everywhere. So when you start leveraging LLMs, once again, it doesn't have to be Cohere. It could be something that you manage. You can make it entirely private. When you start leveraging LLMs, the possibilities of interacting with data expand wildly. Often for good, sometimes for bad, but often it's just going to greatly increase the possibilities for users and to find meaningful content. So let's suppose you are somehow running FileMaker on your little kiosk right here, okay? So I'm just going to type in a very general bird name, nothing too specific, and I am going to say puffin. Let's suppose I'm at a puffin exhibit. Let's see how this goes here. And it's going to feed that into generate response from model. And it's just going to get me some basic types of puffins. All right? Now, I'm going to show you one thing right now, which is already, for me, just a game changer in working with this kind of stuff. I'm going to ask it a secondary question, but I'm not going to mention the word puffin. I'm going to say something like, okay, what is the estimated global population. I didn't say puffin. I didn't even say bird. All right? When I click outside there, it's going to send that back. And look, it says the global population of puffins vary by species. And it starts breaking it down by the type. Now, this is because within Generic Response from Model, you can both dictate all the messages that you're sending off to it and all the messages going back. So you're working with a context that you can manage. There's one specific part that really needs to be stated. You can specify the message size. You don't have to let this thing grow infinitely. If you had a kiosk at a zoo, I mean, I guess it technically could, but in most cases you probably wouldn't. User interaction is probably a matter of minutes. They move on. So you specify the message history there. So once again, you're controlling all the data going in and all the data going out. And every request that you build is done within that context. So it's pretty cool. It's just really you pop in a variable or a field there and it works. So let's suppose I know what type of puffin I actually really want to talk about. And it gave me a common name, the Atlantic puffin. Okay, cool. So some extra objects appear. And I'm just going to try this right here. I'll give you some disclaimers also with what's happening. Cool. So I just hit a little button here. Once again, I just typed in puffin. I picked a common name of one of the types of puffins, and it returned the species name. Pretty cool. I can also just say, what is the average weight of the Atlantic puffin? It's going to give it to me in kilograms and actually pounds because that's more meaningful to me. And then the height as well. All right. Now, disclaimer, we're doing this in a demo. Nothing is necessarily faked, but things are a little bit greased to make it move faster. I'm not necessarily fully leveraging the history. I'm just passing in that word right here, Atlantic puffin. Things go faster. I think whenever I was testing this with Mark, there was a lot of beach balling, and that's problematic. We definitely don't want that in a demo. That is not a limitation of Generate Response from Model, or even necessarily the Cohere API. This is a factor of billing. I'm paying this many dollars for this. So if you spend more than this many dollars, you may not have to do that. You can make things more abstract, flexible. This right here also, I can just hit pull image, and it does just a little search on Wikipedia. I pull in an image. Pretty cool. That's actually not even related to Generate Response Model. That's just kind of a flex. So a few of the features I want to show you. There's a notion of stream, tools, and temperature. Tools is interesting. I bet there is a use case for it. I don't quite get it, but I'll tell you abstractly how it works. Let's suppose I have a function that says like bird height or bird taller or something. I can define that and just pass two birds at it. And when I can just basically say ostrich, puffin, I just point it at the function and it will sort of do the math for me. I don't necessarily have to say which bird is taller. It's going to pick it for me because I can define it as a tool and then leverage that within future queries. The stream mode, pretty cool. I'm going to turn it on. This is an option once again. Right there. Now, so you can kind of see this. Sometimes the queries take a little while. Let's suppose you want a little bit more rapid visual response. So I'm going to say something like, are they endangered? Let's scroll up just a little bit. Yeah. So this is kind of a demo thing right now. We only got so much space. We're trying to get everything fitting on all the screens. Once I click outside, it's not waiting for a response. It's sort of like, I've heard it put like building the sandwich as you're eating it. So just kind of, that's stream mode. I think it looks pretty cool. I think at the last Engage, this is something that Ronnie Rios was using and just looks really neat to me. So there's that. Maybe one other thing I want to show. There is this option right here called Perform JavaScript in WebViewer. And so really you could Let's say you have some sort of request like, okay, how tall is this bird? And the response of what you get from whatever LLM you're talking to can be immediately fed back into a web viewer. Now, web viewers are super neat. They greatly expand how your FileMaker layouts can look. We're going to hit the Peck to Perceive button right here. And we have a visual representation. And my button's cut off. That's unfortunate. We're going to zoom. Nope, exact opposite of what I wanted. All right, cool. And hit Peck to Perceive. The visual representation of a 6-foot human, not Alex as a human, but so we have a 6-foot human, and I'm going to run the generate response from model script step, and I've sort of hard coded to say, how tall is this bird? And I'm going to be very, very specific with it. I don't want any extra text. I just want it to say, get me a figure in meters, return nothing else. When I get the data back, it's going to pass it directly into the JavaScript of which this web viewer is built. And there we go. So any user could come up to the kiosk and they say, how tall is this really? And they could put in their own height. They could compare it to whatever animals in the exhibit. So that's kind of what's going on. And this display bird height. You guys want to see something else? You want to pick a different bird? Yeah. What do we want? Flamingo. All right. Let's see how big those are. We want something bigger than a puffin. That's good. All right, cool. And we're going to say specifically the Chilean flamingo. Cool, we got that. Got the Chilean one. Average weight, average height. Side note, if you try emu, weird stuff happens. Don't do that. It starts pulling in pictures of like universities. So anyway, once again, a lot of this stuff is great. There are some edge cases. I'm going to hit Peck to Perceive, and it should be a lot bigger than the puffin. There we go. Cool. 3'7" Chilean flamingo right there. So maybe some of you are asking why. I'm not a zookeeper. Fair enough. Probably most of you aren't. All of you are here because you have some sort of interest in FileMaker. Some of you are business owners. Probably all of you either are or connected to FileMaker users. So the alternative would be, great, go out to a website. Go to ChatGPT, go to Grok, start doing your requests there. That can work, even if you're paying money for it. But do you really want to give the chance of distraction, okay? The web, once again, like we saw with this, it's a wonderful place. It is terribly distracting, at times terribly inefficient. Do you want to send off your user to say, yeah, open up this tab, and they suddenly look, oh, I could check Reddit. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. You don't want that. You want your users immersed, okay? Secondarily, you get to control billing. You have this pipe of what you're defining right here, because everything's integrated. You get to say, this is exactly how much I want to spend. It's all done from FileMaker. Finally, I would say data retention. If you're doing everything through a web browser, even if you're paying for it, you don't get to control what data you keep. If you integrate it with some other system, like we've done here, you have all your data, all your requests, all the responses stored locally. You can do whatever. Once again, you do have to specify a message history count. That number can be whatever you want. Because we're smart FileMaker developers, we can start exporting stuff out. You don't have to lose anything. So I would strongly recommend you guys look at this. I didn't know a whole lot about this a few weeks ago, and I'm kind of figured it out. It's pretty neat. So once again, thank you for your time. This is Generate Response from Model.
Do we have any questions for Alex?
Thank you. I just had a quick comment. Alex, this was great. I just want to mention, many of you saw my presentation with Matt 2 months ago where we did something similar to this, and we had a 20-some-odd step script to do what Alex is now doing with a single step. So this is a huge upgrade, and if you're looking at using AI, you definitely want to be at 25.
All right. Alex, thank you so much. That was really good. Next up, we have the one, the only, the legend, Heather McCue.
All right. Now, some of you may know I have presented at several community events over the past few years advocating for the adoption of UX design practices. Well, following best UX practice includes asking yourself a very important question before releasing any new feature. Will it improve the lives of my users? I used a closer to home variation on this question to select which of the many new FileMaker 2025 features to share with you here today. Will this improve my life as a FileMaker developer? And I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to show you why the features I've chosen, the ones I've chosen to cover today, rank among the highest in this regard for me personally. But before we dive in on that together, another word of caution, sorry. After my second rehearsal, I thought perhaps I was trying to pack too much into the presentation. So great care was taken in my effort to trim and condense and simplify, and I was quite pleased with myself for having added only one additional feature in my effort, my striving for brevity. So buckle up, but remain calm because there will be a recording. If I'm going too fast, you can look at the recording. All right? Everybody good? We're good. All right. Okay, my list begins with the newly released custom function management features, folders, and filtering. And to illustrate those features, I'm going to share two recent scenarios that I encountered myself. Too many cooks and finding Waldo. Now, I realize that not everyone works in systems quite as large as what I'm about to show you, but if you're a fan of custom functions like we are, you'll appreciate and perhaps even be able to relate to my recent Waldo experience. I added 5 new custom functions for an upgraded feature set. Naturally, adding them was no problem. But in order to then find them, I had to widen the name column and scroll seemingly forever. Now, out of respect for your time, I've sped up this playback of my search because it actually took a full 19 seconds to find my Waldo. I realize that this amount of time may not register as a major burden to you initially, but I can assure you that after needing to repeat this for the many iterations that followed for this module, not only was the cumulative time substantial and therefore costly, the dread that preceded each effort to surface my new functions from among their 380 plus peers was taking a toll, serious toll, on my quality of life. So it's now my pleasure to show you why with FileMaker 2025, I won't be wasting any more of that valuable, otherwise productive time searching endlessly like this anymore. So the first thing you're going to notice when I open my Manage Custom Functions dialog now is that folders have been added to organize my library. Yes, I know. Woo! Streamers and all. And I'm going to demonstrate how easy this is to maintain and extend. Now, because my new functions were added in support of payroll, I'm going to start by adding a new folder within my existing support payroll folder. And after naming my folder, I'm going to paste my functions from the dev stack. They're going to land at the end of my list, and that's fine. There we go, paste, there we go. I'll just drag them up to where I want them. I'm going to verify that they're in fact there. Then I'm going to move my folder to where I want it, close everything up. Yep, still there. There we go, everything's where I want it, and voila, no Waldos. But wait, there's more. Similar to other dialogues like Script Workspace and Layout Manager, Manage Custom Functions now includes a filter, allowing me to locate what I want even more quickly. That's everything. Okay, so by using FileMaker 2025 to organize your custom functions in combination with the new search filter, you too can say bye-bye to the time-consuming and costly Waldo experiences. Now, a bit of context for this next scenario. We at Harmonic are major fans of collaboration, and we have multiple developers on our team. So as a result, many cooks have worked in our code kitchen. which reminds me of an old English proverb you may have heard about too many cooks. Well, with FileMaker 2025, even a crowded kitchen like ours needn't spoil the broth. To minimize the inevitable chaos that can grow over time in your solutions, I recommend that you take advantage of this valuable new management feature to begin organizing your own custom functions within logical folder structures that make sense to you. Now, stepping away from the negativity here, the time-sucking, laborious, and frustrating nature of the effort too often spent locating just the right custom functions, I'm also going to share a common example of what can happen when developers can't find for what they're looking for quickly enough. In this example, a date formatting function, YYYYMMDD, which you might be able to figure out what that's doing, was added in 2017. Then another with identical functionality, character by character, identical functionality was added the following year. Now, because they're functional duplicates, when the same functionality was needed by another developer on our team in 2020 for another file, it should be no surprise that the duplicate was chosen instead of the original. But then later in 2024, same scenario, different file, but this time the original was chosen. Not only is the addition of unnecessary code a quick way to spoil an otherwise fabulous FileMaker soup, it's been my experience that custom functions become increasingly susceptible to this eventuality over time, regardless of how many cooks are in the kitchen. And to prove this point, I'm willing to admit, just between us, I was the author for both of those functions. Not only did I recreate an existing function that I forgot I'd already written, I am pleased to find that it was identical, but that aside, I remained blissfully unaware of the duplication until just recently, after I'd grouped them into the same date utilities folder. So it wasn't until 2025 that I was able to notice that there was a duplicate. But that's enough about me. Because the challenge of locating the best tool from our own ever-growing collection of functions had increased so substantially, I recently took on the challenge of corralling our most used custom functions into a central library. I started my project with a new file into which I imported all of the custom functions from several of our solution files. The resulting repository included a whopping 1,378 custom functions. Right. You can imagine. So the daunting nature of my next task to review and dedupe them all persuaded me to set the project aside and wait for FileMaker 2025 before picking it up again. I think the results are well worth the wait. Let's take a look. I started with some high-level folders so I could quickly separate the functions we use as shortcuts from those that I consider to be utilities, module supports, or even issues. I then created subfolders where doing so made sense. I created type-specific utility folders so we could, for example, peruse and choose from all of our JSON-related functions and locate an existing date-related function, before writing a new one. So you've probably noticed, if you've been watching the screen here, that I created a temporary new custom folder, and I'm transferring over some functions from an existing subfolder. And there's a reason I'm doing this. Okay, so I move them. That went as expected. Now I can select them, and I want you to see what happens when I move them back. And as you can see, the select, move, drag, drop works as expected. So they landed all together in the same group that they were in the folder I'd moved them to. But if you, like me, prefer the time savings of alphabetized lists, it may be a disappointment to learn that we no longer have sort options in custom functions. However, I consider that a very minor trade-off for the functionality that we've gained, because this is going to save considerable time and frustration. And before I move on, there is one additional somewhat subtle feature I'd also like to point out. You can now filter by folders as well. Simply choose from the pull-down list And not only will you see the contents of your selection, its function count is also displayed. So I can quickly see that I have 35 shortcut functions or that I have 33 JSON utilities. I think that's pretty cool. All right, my notes say, take a sip of water now. So to recap, FileMaker 2025 allows us to create infinite folders for organizing and provides us with filters for rapidly locating our custom functions. But we no longer have a sort option. Next on my high-value list is the ability to collapse and expand scripts. More specifically, the option to collapse and expand certain script segments. I'm excited to first demonstrate the new feature within scripts, showing how it really helps to declutter the view, allowing for a more organized, focused, and efficient scripting experience. My second demo focuses on the importance of structuring our scripts for clarity and readability when using collapsed steps. So we can now collapse and expand the steps within an if statement. Simply click on the green arrow located at the beginning of a segment to collapse or expand. Yeah, imagine. See where your mind goes here. Now, when an if statement includes either an else or an else if, these collapse and expand separately from the if itself. This retains visibility of their structure for maximum readability. We can also collapse and expand the steps contained within a loop or an open transaction segment. Here's just one example, and don't worry about being able to read the script. That's not the point. This is one example of a typical script with multiple ifs and a loop and some nested ifs. Within these mere 72 lines, there are 10 different segments that can be optionally collapsed. And when collapsed, it's literally half the length, even with its self-documenting comments. It's simple and brief, no doubt, and that's great. Unfortunately, with most of its self-documenting comments now located within the collapsed segments, it's not communicating to me in a meaningful way. But with only a few updates, the script can retain its simpler collapsed state while also informing me, the developer, of both purpose and options. In addition to adding comments to the existing if calcs, I also replaced else steps with else if steps, specifically so I could add comments. And if you can see it closely enough, you'll notice that the else if test is just one, because it was an else, which was going to be true if it got there, right? So just replacing that else with else if one, and then your comment will work. I also preceded the loop with duplicates of comments that were previously located inside of the loop. Now, I didn't remove them from inside of the loop because they're specific to, the different steps within the loop. But I literally grabbed those comments, duplicated them, and dragged them up above the loop. Quick and simple. And yes, FileMaker 2025 does provide keyboard shortcuts for collapsing and expanding. Not only the selected blocks like I just showed you, but the blocks plus all of their sub-steps or all blocks within the current script. Don't try to memorize these now. You can review them in the recording, or you can find them on Claris FileMaker Pro Helps page for keyboard shortcuts. Take another sip of water. So to recap, we can now collapse and expand large segments of our scripts, and with simple updates, we can retain, perhaps even improve upon, the information conveyed to us by the scripts themselves. I encourage you all to explore this feature in your own solutions to enhance your productivity while working in complex scripts and when working with co-developers to make it easier for them to be able to follow the logic of your larger, longer scripts. And consider where simple updates like the ones I've shown you could be applied to retain that readability and understanding of your workflow. FileMaker 2025 has also delivered the long-awaited ability to comment our tables directly in the schema. Have you ever asked yourself or others, when was this table added? Who added this table or why? I certainly have, and I cannot count how many times. What is this for? This name does not make sense, right? So particularly in large systems. Now, I have seen as a solution, as a workaround for not having the ability to add a note, I've seen people add comments directly in the schema with the little post-it notes, which is great if you have 5 tables and very few, 5 tables and 10 relationships, right? But those don't work over time. More table occurrences get added, the context of that note gets lost, things get moved, things have to get cleaned up. So that's not particularly helpful. So I'm real excited to show you how simple it is now to add comments directly to your tables. So let's take a look at our tables and see what's different. Looks very similar to what we're used to seeing, but look what happens when we click on the details column. This now works just like our field comments with our table comment entry down below. Now, historically, I've added a field comment to the table's primary key to document when, by whom, and why a table was added to a system or to describe its purpose. I don't need to do that anymore because I can add it directly to the table itself, which I think is pretty darn cool. I suggest that we all embrace this improvement and advance our documentation standards. I got to throw in something about documentation. Documentation? What's that? It's not having to ask the question, when was this added? How long has this been here? Why is it here? There are no records in that table. All right, take another sip of water. So to recap, table comments work just like field comments. They allow us to self-document table-specific details where those comments belong. FileMaker 2025 does not, however, include a corresponding get table comment function like the get field comment. Not yet, anyway. I'm hoping that FileMaker watches this. Put that on my list. All right. FileMaker 2025 has also eliminated the need for an oft-used workaround. So what does navigating beyond context mean? This common scenario where we have separate data and UI files. There's a process performed in our data file with the user finishing in the same found set, but on a layout in the UI file. Now, because the context of our found set is a table that lives in the data file, using a simple GTRR won't do the trick. To accomplish the desired results for our user, we instead call a script located in our UI file, giving it parameters for our destination layout and the IDs of our found set. It then constructs and performs the appropriate find from the context of our specified destination. And that's how we get around the fact that we can't do a GTRR. Well, FileMaker 2025 has delivered us a solution that replaces our need for this workaround scripting. Currently shown is a segment from our workaround script, this portion that's responsible for actually building and performing the find. It's pretty simple, and it usually executes rather quickly. It's like no time, right? But performance is clearly impacted by the size of our found set. This is great when your found set is 25 records or less. But if your found set is 1,200, it's going to take a little while. Within our new script step, go to list of records, we can populate the list of record IDs using the new function get record IDs from found set. And then similar to our familiar GTRR step, we specify the display layout, and we can specify a new window if we want. And of course, for FileMaker Go, we can also specify animation. The final item on my list today may not sound exciting on the surface, but I assure you it's a high value feature for us at Harmonic. The reason is that we deliver regularly scheduled builds to our clients, which often include backfill requirements. And we need to deliver these updates without altering existing and essential modification histories. There may even be someone in the room here that's familiar with that. Accomplishing this is not difficult, but it does require a bit of scripting. First, we locate the records in need of updates. We export their mod fields. We perform our required backfills. Then we locate those modified records, and we import the original mod values with the auto-enter options turned off, of course. Now, I have a long and successful history with this approach. I've been using it for years. It's proven quite dependable. It's easy to replicate for different tables. It's always been the way to go. But when populating newly added fields in existing records, for example, the real cost of using this, what I consider a tried and true method for protecting our mod field values, is in the time it actually takes to perform the export and import steps. So I've pulled a few metrics from some of our own historic build-related backfill efforts to illustrate the concrete value of the new optional auto-enter feature. I've included for your reference updates that involved from 87.6 thousand to 2.7 million records. And as you can see, the time required to perform the initial export plus the import took between a half hour and nearly 4 hours. That's right. Somebody said, ouch. They're right. So the scripted export-import mods model that we've used has been a very effective and dependable but costly approach. One that can now be avoided if we execute our backfills using the new FileMaker 2025 option for replace field contents. Let's take a look. Here's the replace field contents script step that we're all familiar with. And this is how it might look in FileMaker 2025. Notice the skip auto enter options conditions. So how did we set this? When we open the step setting, you'll notice a new option at the bottom. It says perform auto enter options for fields. We simply uncheck the box. That's it. This represents, I'm going to tell you, share this with you. This represents literally hours, probably days out of my life. Billable hours, but those hours have now been reduced and improved. If you are a developer or you employ developers, you not only want, you need FileMaker 2025. Take a sip of water. All right, to recap, replace field comments now provides us with the option to disable auto-enter updates. And for us at Harmonic, this represents a meaningful savings of time for us, a cost savings for our clients, and a truly meaningful improvement to my own life. I trust that you too will find value and that your lives as developers will be similarly improved by the FileMaker 2025 features that I've shared with you. Now, I should mention here at the end that there are, of course, many other new features that I know will add value and improve my life. But I was given a very specific window of time, which I've already gone over, sorry. And you all have already heard what happened the last time I tried to create a little more space. So thank you for joining me. And do we have any questions?
We have a little bit of time. Any questions for the great Heather McCue?
Yes, Taylor. Oh, wait for the mic.
The get record IDs is really awesome. It also preserves how you get them so that you can pass them in the order that they already are in and restore them. And there's also, you can display them as JSON arrays or it's just as lists. And you can also have ranges.
That's right. There are a number of options for that.
It's going to improve. Yeah. Excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
The fact that you can reconstruct a found set with these IDs also comes in super handy if you do perform script on server with callback, in which case your callback script knows nothing about the previous found set, and you can use this script step to reconstitute that found set on your arrival back. So
that's an excellent point. Daisy.
We have the find ID script that we use all over the place.
Yes, that's what I was referring to, yeah.
Yeah, because we are in one file and we want to GTRR to a found set, but we want to go to the same layout in that file, not to the originating data file that it came from. So this will help a lot, that we don't have to jump files to jump files.
I think if we looked in Harmonics, for example, for how many times we use the script find ID list, we would find tons of instances.
Yeah.
And not only do we use it many times, but we have to put that same workaround script in several different files because our destination could be anywhere while our work is happening anywhere. So this basically just replaces all of that with one script step. It's kind of like a GTRR that's not. Yeah.
All right, Brian, you are up.
Thanks for being here today. So for a lot of us, FileMaker data is mostly a historical record of something that has happened, right? What if our data could tell us about what's going to happen? Now we can. Let me introduce you to a new script step in FileMaker 2025. We now have configure regression model and its companion function, predict from model. These are so new, in fact, that there's no documentation yet. But not to worry, I will talk us through it. What is a regression model? Well, it's about teaching an algorithm to understand the relationship between an independent value and a target value. Well, great. How could I use something like that to predict a result? Well, here's one way. Companies like Strava and Nike have collected data on runners for years. If you plot enough of these data points, you can accurately predict the average pace for nearly any distance. Here's another way, often referred to as a binary tree. In data science, these are called decision trees. At every split, some kind of condition gets evaluated. And the point of these is to continue splitting on those conditions until all the possible outcomes are run to ground. When we train a regression model in FileMaker, we'll create hundreds or even thousands of these trees to build something called a random forest. A random forest life begins with a set of training data. The records are randomly split. Typically, it's an 80-20 split, 80 for training, 20% for testing. Each record gets passed through its own decision tree. In each tree, a random subset of features gets evaluated, and something called information gain is calculated. There's some pretty elaborate math out there on the interwebs for those interested. Eric, who is not here, so that joke is not going to land at all. All right. So at the end of this process, outcomes from all the trees are averaged, and we can use the net information gain to predict target value. Well, Brian, that sounds fascinating. What does it look like in code? So I have two examples ready for you today. The first example is an App Store review model that I trained that uses a text embedding in order to predict a star rating, 1 through 5 star rating. The second example is going to be a student model, and we'll use that to predict a student's GPA. So, hop over here. So in the interest of time, I've created the embeddings and trained the model already, but you're not missing much, so don't worry about that. The only thing you're really missing is waiting on a momentary status bar, so I won't bore you with that. So we've got a models table here. I've got two models, and I have the container where these model files reside. Notice the .fm reg extension. And so this file is the output from the configure regression model step. So let's have a look at that. So here we've got a bunch of commented out stuff that doesn't matter for this discussion. The configure regression model step has lots of parameters. The first one is action. We've got 4 options here. We can train a model, we can save it, load it, or unload it. These last 3 are boring compared to the training part, and that's what we're talking about today. So I've selected train model. The model name, don't overcomplicate this. This is simply a text representation for the model itself. But it's important, we need it because it's what we're going to pass. It's one of the parameters that we're going to pass to the predict from model function later on. So got to have that. The algorithm, you can have any algorithm you want as long as it's random forest. Training vectors. So for each training record, this is the vector embedding result. Training target is the value that we want to associate with that embedding. And then later on, it's the value that we're going to predict. This value's got to be a number, so that's important to remember. The skip empty or invalid, not sure about this. There's no documentation yet, but my guess is that you should probably just leave this option on unless you've got a really good reason to turn it off. The reason, I think, is because when you get into training larger and larger models, you're probably talking about hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of records, and this takes a long time. You don't want that process interrupted 80% of the way through after you've watched a babysit a status bar for 3 or 4 hours. You don't want it to stop and then have to restart that. So that's my guess as to what that feature is about. So I would go ahead and leave it on. And then our final parameter here is save model to. This is just a destination. It can be a variable or a container. And this is the destination for the model file that's going to get created, which is this guy right here. So I'm going to break back out to our data here real quick for our reviews. So this is just, I trained it on 300-ish, 320 reviews, got the text of the review and the rating, and then the text was used to create these embeddings. If you need a reminder, or haven't ever dealt with the insert vector embeddings function, I'll give you an example of what that looks like. This is what an embedding looks like. It is a JSON array of numbers. That's all it is. Just lots and lots of numbers. And so this is how all these numbers work together to encode. Oops, let me hop over here. These values are used to encode semantic meaning, and it's how large general purpose models like ChatGPT work, right? So that's a vector embedding. Let me hop back over to our test data. Yeah, so now we're over in our test data, and we're going to go ahead and predict a rating. So we've got a user Nancy here says the app crashes at least once every session. So fantastic. So we'll take her review, we'll create a vector embedding out of that, pass that to the predict from model, and we can predict that Nancy hates our app. So, exactly. Oh, I don't want to go there yet. Our user Avery likes the app but thinks it could be better, so that's fair. We'll take her review, create a vector embedding out of that, pass that to our model, and net a 3.2 star rating. So that's not bad. That's fair. Stan, super fan, loves the app, thinks it's great, loves the itinerary sharing feature. So he's pretty emphatic about this, which is great. We embed that, send it to the model, and we bagged a 4.8 star rating. So thank you, Stan. Appreciate it. So as you can see, text embeddings, training on a text embedding is pretty straightforward, right? It's just a text field. But let's try something a little more interesting. Let me hop over to So here, instead of creating a text embedding, I trained this model on a collection of fields from the database. In data science, these kinds of attributes are called features. It's important to note here that features must be encoded as numbers. But you can use the relatively new JSON make array function. I think that was in the last version, previous release. The JSON make array function will help you create these feature arrays. So let's see how to do that. I think that's in the data viewer. Sweet. So here, I've taken my 4 attributes, my 4 fields that I want to train the model on, put them into a list, pass that list to the JSON make array function, join it on the return character, and then I've defined these values to be of type number. And then I'm just returning it. Voila, we have a features array. So one of the things you'll notice here is I'm only using 4 features. The ChatGPT vector embedding has thousands of these. How am I getting away with doing it with 4? Well, our model isn't a general purpose model, is it? We've trained it on our own data, and so we only need a handful of these features to make all this work. So let's go ahead and predict some GPAs. So we've got a student here, perfect attendance, studies all day, somehow finds time to sneak in a music program. So taking these 4 values, created our features array here. We're going to pass that to predict from model. And we can predict 3.73 GPA, so not bad. Good job, dude. Here we've got a problem. This kid doesn't show up, doesn't study, can't be bothered with anything, apparently. And so we've got our features array for those values here. We're going to predict from model on that. And as you might expect, we have a 1.3 GPA, which is pretty terrible. But wait, we trained this model. This is our data. And so what if I go in here, take care of some of these absences, get his attendance up, put this kid in a in a library on occasion. So now we've got a new features array, updated values. I'm going to pass this to our model that we trained. And now we're coming back with a more respectable 3.2. Good job. All right. So when you look at the configure regression model step, it can be easy to think that it only works with text embeddings, right? I mean, the way some of the parameters are labeled, the way the language in the soon-to-be documentation talks about vector embeddings a lot. And so it's easy to think that it only works with text embeddings. And text embeddings are fine. It does work that way. But you can absolutely train a model on any array of values. I'm going to say that again, any array of values. So as long as you can represent them as numbers. And that's not immediately obvious here, but this is a really big deal. So hopefully, I've got your wheels turning a little bit now, and you're starting to see how powerful this feature is. Shout out to Claris for providing it. Thank you. Because now, instead of just using FileMaker to collect, summarize, and present our data, we can train a model and use it to make predictions about data we don't already have. And y'all are smart. I'm going to predict that you'll find lots of places to use this like I have. Got some resources here for those who want to dive a little deeper. You can fine-tune a random forest. You can limit the number of trees, the number of splits, and some other parameters. There are tools that will help you clean up and prepare your data to make your predictions more accurate, which you don't have to do, but it can help. If you want to get your predictions up to well north of 90%, you may need to do some fine-tuning. If you have any questions about any of these tools, feel free to chat me up at lunch, and I will talk your ear off about it. And with that, I thank you for your attention. Like and subscribe. Smash the like button.
All right, any questions for Brian?
I've actually got a question for myself. I mentioned earlier about creating a features array and that they all have to be numeric values. And so what you might be wondering is, well, a lot of my FileMaker data is not numeric, right? And so how would I turn those into numbers? And so some of those mappings are going to be really easy, right? You've got, true false values, checkbox sets. You can easily map true and false to 1 and 0. But what if you've got like a values list to create a drop-down menu or something? Those values might be in a related table, so they have keys, right? If your keys are numeric, you can just use the key as part of your features array. That's not going to be helpful if you're using UUIDs for record IDs, but I just wanted to point out that as you go to create your vectors and your features array, if you're searching for a way to make numbers out of these values, that don't overcomplicate it. If you've got record IDs that are numeric already, go ahead and use those. It doesn't matter what the number is. As long as they are numeric, the random forest and the regression training will figure all that out for you. So, didn't mention that earlier.
So following up on your last comment and what you described, can you explain how, let's say, what we are converting to a number value is text? So like the ratings, the app.
Yeah, the review text.
The app review text.
Yeah.
Is that like you would be converting the entire paragraph that they've written into a single number, or would you be taking words within that and converting them to numbers? So like the word love would be part of it. I'm not sure how many matches you would get to a number that is representative of the entire paragraph. I guess that's what I'm
Right.
asking
So
about.
the first example, the reviews model, was trained on a single field. It was
trained on the ratings that went with those comments.
The review
right?
text is just a single field, and so I used the OpenAI. I just used an API call to ChatGPT to create the vector embedding.
Okay.
And because that was a single field that did the training, all the vector embedding that has probably thousands of numbers in it, frankly, that's enough for the model to train on. If you've got other fields, multiple fields, like location information, maybe a list of cities or just anything really. If you need to use multiple attributes to train the model, then you'll need to get maybe a little creative about a mapping table or a hash table or something like that to maybe the states start at 1 and go to 1, 2, 3, 4. If you can map it to a record ID that's numeric already, you can absolutely use one of those. True and false is typically 1 and 0.
So for something like state, where what you have is maybe an abbreviation of the state, could you go as simple as like using the FileMaker code function to convert it to a number?
Sure. Actually, that's a good idea. Yeah, you could use, there's probably 3 or 4 functions like that that will help you reduce something like that down to a numeric value. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more? Want to direct your all attention to the lovely blue in the room QR code. That'll take you to the landing page for this event on the Harmonic website. And on that page now, there is a button that says take a survey. Demo files are also available from that spot. We also have a FileMaker 2025 enablement kit, which has all sorts of really good stuff